We warmly welcome you for another edition of In Conversation right here on Daily Mirror. And today we have with us a very special individual, someone whose vision about fashion really goes beyond the physical aspect of it, creating a platform for amazing fashion entrepreneurs and designers and so forth. Their legacy is in the making for almost 2 decades. Today I have with me the founder and the managing director of Colombo Fashion Week, Ajai Vir Singh. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you for having me.
How have you been these days? You're probably busy with the upcoming Fashion Week, so...
Yeah, it's one to the other. It keeps going on.
Definitely. Just before we really dive into the specifics of the conversation, Ajay, I would really like to know what the journey has been like for the past 18 years, especially with the CFW brand.
Well, it's another year added every year, so it's 18 years now. So we started in 2003. No one knew us for first 5 years. We were quite in the dark period when you tried to start new things. Then so we've been through a lot. We've been through air attacks. We've been through new brands being launched. We have been considered as one of the most important fashion weeks over a period of time in South Asia. So it's a very interesting journey, and we've come a long way now. When we look back, and if you even count, we have close to, I would say 85% of designers that you see in Sri Lanka today are the product of the Colombo Fashion Week platform.
Definitely. I'm sure it has been a learning curve, but now it's definitely the talk of the town every year. So really getting into it, we see you bringing new elements into the fashion ecosystem. You want to have a philosophical approach that goes beyond just using, external appearances and manipulating them. So we see the concept of sustainability very much incorporated in your showcases as well. So how will you approach this year?
Well, we're introducing a new aspect within the responsible fashion movement, which we're very passionate about. And responsibility has been one of the key pillars of CFW from the time we started. Yes. Because we look at all these things a little differently, So we always looked at it differently, though we were not seen as people, that fashion and sustainability at one point of time were two separate pillars, right? We never looked at it like that. We wanted it to be one, so we were always one with that. So now what we do is every year we come out and we make it more relevant so that there's solutions for the society, solutions for the designers. And so this year we have taken another step forward because, after 2020, everyone is trying to be more responsible in everything that they do.
Hashtag sustainable.
in every way,
Definitely.
So I feel it's really good that the clothes that you wear should be good as well.
Definitely, and I think that brings me to the next question. Like talking about the modern economies, Ajay, like we can see there is a very linear. Everything's done in a linear aspect, and but however you bring this ideology about circularity into this ecosystem. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, like I was telling you earlier, everything is designed for vertical, So years ago, when I think there was not enough burden on the environment or the society, every new invention would be, oh wow, there's a new invention, it's a solution, right? And let's go and create it. So it would have a very vertical approach. You create it, you ideate it, create it, manufacture it, consume it, experience it, and finish, and then it goes straight back there. And that's how the world was formed, because industrial revolution, IT, whatever you see, and what people thought was solutions were actually very short term, because it was solution for a immediate experience, right? But then it became a problem, right? So after a while we realized that not just me, but there's people around the world who always look at things like who look beyond just the experience, and then they look at things like, are those things that we created, are they good for the environment? Are they good for the society long term, yes. Right? And especially when the whole, that book Inconvenient Truth came out years and years ago, 2 decades ago, people started realizing that, it's not, all's not well with the world.
There are consequences to the fun.
Consequences to the fun, yeah. And then over the period of time, I think last 4-5 years, this new buzzword, how word evolves is beautiful. The world evolves is beautiful. So if you see 20-30 years ago, it was societal well-being, child labor, free of child labor, good working environment, fair wages. That was a big thing, if you remember, right? Then later on, suddenly people realized, okay, now that's sorted. And how about the environment? Then everyone's focus after Inconvenient Truth kind of moved towards environment, melting, glaciers and global warming. And in that, somewhere you realize that fashion industry came really top in terms of the damage it was doing. And at one point, it had reached number 2 in terms of the most derogatory or most degrading industry in the world, because it was causing so much harm, and that was after petroleum, which inherently is polluting, right? So when it reached those proportions, people started realizing that what the heck is going on? These are just clothes. How can they be so damaging to the environment? Then then there was a free fall to understand. The designers who create good clothes have been commercialized, and the ones who's commercialized thought, okay, let's go into hyper consumption, let's go into fast consumption, fast production, fast consumption, and forget the design. Let's just get new small designs, but go and make it mass, right? That's when the issue started, and then people started looking at it. Okay, what do we do now? There's so much of waste, right? Even Sri Lanka as well. We're not away from it, like everywhere, and that kind of consumption gave rise to so many other, those retail stores around. So if you go anywhere in Colombo, you'll see retail stores, food stores, retail stores, food stores. Like those two stores are throughout,
all
right?
turned into one, yeah.
and you realize that those stores are the ones who are actually gaining, in a way, because you need business, but how the business is being created is not very sustainable. So then we said, okay, since circularity is such a big thing around the world, we know it's very important. Just being recycling alone won't help. You have to change the entire format, right? And then we re-looked at circularity from Sri Lankan perspective, what we could do with the designers, how do we educate them, how do we build awareness, because it's a shift in your thinking. Circularity is not a one-off thing. You really need to shift your business. And how many are willing to take the chance or the risk or the cost to shift the business is where we are now.
Definitely. And I think I would also like to ask you, from a consumer's perspective, how can they, you can just maybe give a simple instance, but from the perspective of a consumer, how can they really execute this mechanism of, operating on circularity?
Yeah, it's very, okay, let's start with so in a conversation there are two. So there's a fashion consumer and there's a fashion designer. This designer creates for the consumer. So it's always like that, right?
Yeah.
And so we decided to get the designers little equipped and empowered in creating circular, right? So we started something called a responsible meter in 2019, but we launched it last year. We were probably the first fashion week in the world to launch it, where every garment that is shown on the fashion week, even this time, has a garment tag, it has a responsible tag to it. Okay. So you could see the score, how well that garment is performed on responsibility. 5 points are for societal well-being, and the balance 5 are for the environmental well-being. So each designer gets evaluated on that.
Interesting.
Right? So that's like the first. That mechanism is the first in the world anyway. So we worked on it for 2 years to create that, right? So now what happens with that is that we now encourage the consumers, before they consume, look for the tag. Right? So they inbuilt circularity in their purchase system. And one of the points or scoring systems of the responsible meter is that designer needs to have a disposable plan. Means when they create a shirt or what you're wearing, and when you buy, there has to be a plan for you how to dispose it, right? And there's another aspect to it where they can take it back from you at a certain discount for your next purchase. So they don't allow it to. So they have to think with disposal while creating it, right?
So structurally, we can see that can really dilute the drop.
That can dilute the drop, and that is exactly what needs to happen. So it's not just like, so the designers who are creating like this now are creating real solutions, because they're creating clothes, but they're also creating the life journey. They're creating how will it be disposed. They're creating the entire kind of an ecosystem for it, right? But that is what is required, and not just, and 1 and 2 won't help. So we plan to have the entire industry on circularity. So we're really pushing it hard
And
this
we're
time.
really looking forward to see how this vision is going to be incrementally executed. So actually, how does the CFW brand, over time you can see that they are creating a stepping stone to responsible fashion. Let's talk about how you want to really see this movement manifest through Colombo Fashion Week.
Well, like I said, Colombo Fashion Week, in a way, we are a development organization. So whatever we create, our main cause is to uplift fashion in Sri Lanka and then take it global in a manner that Sri Lanka ends up having a design identity. So whatever designers create, it's not just, fabric from here, little design from here, manufactured here and out in the market. It needs to be in a manner where the entire thought process needs to kind of reflect Sri Lanka as a design industry, right? So that is very important. Now, for that to happen, we encourage designers to look at craft that is available in Sri Lanka, look at various weaving techniques that you could use. Otherwise, you're actually buying fabric that has come to Pamanua from somewhere else, pick it up, and then so it's easy. You're not really going.
Definitely.
Designer needs to create from ground up, the fabric, the design, the thought patterns, everything. I must tell you this story that when you're in the beginning of our journey, people used to go to Singapore and they would buy their cocktail dresses from Singapore, who could at that time. And in 2008 or 9, I think Darshi was one of the first ones who came out of the system in 2007. She showed at the Fashion Week in 2007. And as per her, she hadn't done a show before, so that was the first one, and that was like incredibly successful. To us, it was like, okay, first big one has come, right? Then I think Kanchana, Katie Brown was after. Then there was Sonali Dharmavardhana. Then Charini. Charini was in 2003. Charini at the first Fashion Week. Charini was the intern who worked backstage. In 2009, she launched as a designer, right? So the incredible journeys there. So what I was trying to get at was in 2009, we were out somewhere, and for the first time, I heard that in a cocktail setting, one fashion consumer telling the other one that I'm wearing so and so designer. Oh, I'm wearing that one. So all were designers from Colombo Fashion Week. Just a year before, it used to be, oh, I bought this in Singapore. Oh, I bought this from here. So I realized that one of the greatest success that we have had is building pride in Sri Lankan fashion, in Sri Lankan designers, so that they become talk of the town and fashion consumers start moving the share of the wallet from purchasing from overseas into purchasing in Sri Lankan designers. So the ecosystem for commerce also started within the same thing.
Definitely, and we can see it, directly or indirectly, it's supporting the local supply chain. It's protecting the cash flow. So I guess you can really see how the mechanism is shifting. And localizing fashion, of course, is very important. So do you have any plans out of curiosity, do you have any other plans of really taking CFW really like globally at any point?
Well, Fashion Weeks from any country is always the representation of the design industry of that country. So, but the success is that if that design is accepted around the world, So we are trying to go very strong on sustainability, because I feel that as the apparel industry and as the design industry, we have spent a considerable amount of time studying this, understanding. And plus our industry is small. So when it's small, it's very quick to maneuver, very quick to change directions, right? And that has got us a little nimble on our movements. So I realized that if we go strong on sustainability, means if you go very strong on responsibility, like that's why tools like Responsible Meter play a huge role, because no one has that tool. So if someone starts using the tool, they also realize that, okay, the tool came out of Sri Lanka, so they must be doing something right with sustainability. So we want to actually create a strong ecosystem that every designer who comes out, right, for the designer, I think sustainability or responsibility should be natural, should be normal. It's not that we train them to now be responsible. They should just by default be responsible.
It should be a default setting.
It's a default setting. And that to me will be a huge plus, because around the world, people will look for designers who are sustainable, right? And in most of the other countries, their ecosystems are so huge. For you to go responsible, they're going to spend like billions of dollars to shift the whole thinking. For us, we could be really, really fast. So I feel we also make use of the opportunities and we stay a little ahead in South Asia or in this part of the world or Southeast Asia. We stay a little ahead, and in terms of understanding and being relevant and understanding how the fashion industry is moving globally and how we can still make a mark globally with that move, So those are the kind of plans and the whole direction where we're going.
It's definitely fascinating to see, because traditionally fashion used to be this element that used to harness vanity and ego and give you that identity. But now we can see there's so much of empathy that is surfacing through the vision of fashion.
Yeah.
And especially with the value system that Sri Lankans have, we can definitely make it actually practical. So why choose fashion to really bring social change?
Well, I look at fashion very differently. So I look at a human need. Human need is food, clothing, shelter. Okay, so I look at fashion from the perspective of clothing, right? So it's everyone's need. Clothing is everyone's need, just like how food is and shelter is. Okay, so what you wear on you is a need, right? So if it's a need, there's a multiplier effect on who creates it, who consumes it, how you consume it, right? So at some level, it's a basic need, right? And because it's a basic need, there's a whole industry and an ecosystem required to fulfill that need. So that has an impact, direct impact on the society, right? Like how food has impact on society, so is like shelter has. So to me, there's nothing better than fashion, because fashion at the lowest point is a need, at the highest point is a luxury, right? So if you're clever, you can impact the society and be a voice for change around the world, because you cover all the spectrums of that. So to me, fashion is something that you could use, and then fashion has a has a glamour element to it, which could be influencing a thought process for the next gen that's coming up, right? Because the next gen wants an inspiration always.
Definitely.
So fashion can provide that.
So we really do find this concept of sustainability pretty attractive. I mean, it has been a social media movement, and the next gen, we can see them voicing their concerns pertaining to it. So I would actually like to know, why is it still not happening on a broad scale, practical caliber? Because we can see a lot of people say things like, oh, being sustainable is pricey. It's really not practical to do it frequently on the long run. And we hear so much of opinion about it. So I would like to hear your take on that as well.
Yeah, so I always say it's a consumer's fault, not the designer's fault. It's a consumer's fault that because consumer has the vote, their dollars or rupees that they spend on buying something is their vote. I want sustainable, I'm okay with this, I can go with that, and that's the problem. That's one. Number two, the perception of sustainability is it's not so glamorous, it's not so luxurious, it's not stylish, right? To me, the designers are being trained now in such a manner where I want to break that perception. It should be like sustainability and being responsible should be a luxury, because their time spent in craftsmanship and things like that. So that's why our whole challenge or our whole focus is designers need to create like this. Then there is a meter. That's for the responsible meter that I was talking about. There's a responsible meter. Consumers need to check that before they buy. So that will put pressure on the designers to create good. They will be aware that saying, okay, here's the meter. I know what was used in that creating of the garment, and that alone can start the movement. Designers alone can't do it. So it's on the consumer. So I always blame the consumer. People say, but why are designers not doing more sustainable work? And I said, it's your fault. You're not asking for it.
Everyone's got to eat, everyone's got to make a living. So I guess it has to be like, you cannot clap with one hand. So
absolutely. So you have to do that. And that's why we put a lot of emphasis on the responsible fashion meter. This year, in spite of all the pandemic where it was all closed up, and we thought we were not able to give a huge exposure to the responsible meter. I think it came at the right time, because now is the time for someone to look at responsible meter. So we moved to phase 2 of it, and we'll be doing something really interesting with HSBC and along with this on responsible meter. You'll hear it soon. So we want to make it like a standard across all the design industries in Sri Lanka. So not just fashion, it could be like any object created should have a responsible meter, and you encourage the designers to actually go and look for the responsible meter before they make the purchase.
Definitely. So we wish you all the very best for
Thank
this
you.
year, and we're very much looking forward to it. And it's amazing to see, the idea of fashion really considering not just the world but the planet as well. So Earth and world, we have decoupled it too many
Yeah.
times, and I think it's time to really make a really strong connection throughout. So Ajay, thank you
Absolutely.
so much
Thank you for
engaging
having
with
me.
me.